The Best of Living in Iowa is funded in part by the Gilchrist Foundation. Founded by Jocelyn Gilchrist, furthering the philanthropic interests of the Gilchrist family in wildlife and conservation, the arts and public broadcasting, and disaster relief.
Funding for this program was provided by Friends, the Iowa Public Television Foundation. Generations of families and friends who feel passionate about the programs they watch on Iowa Public Television.
Hello, this is Morgan Halgren. For 16 seasons, Living in Iowa told the tale of what it means to be uniquely Iowan. Tonight, we honor that spirit by bringing you another glimpse into our rich heritage with a few stories from our archives. In this episode of The Best of Living in Iowa, we'll revisit our exploration of the lasting work done by the Civilian Conservation Corps. Take a look at a utopia that lasted only 38 years, and watch the Herculean efforts undertaken to rescue a one-of-a-kind bridge from destruction. If your family fell on hard times, really hard times, would your 18-year-old son go do hard labor 5 days a week and then send 4/5 of his pay back home? That's what 12,800 young Iowans did in the midst of the Great Depression, and their families and the whole state were better off because of it. Much of what we enjoy today in Iowa's state parks we owe to a group of young men who in the 1930s and 40s were not much more than boys. It was their hard labor that built the lodges, dams, and trails that can still be found in many of Iowa's state parks. They were the boys of the CCC.
Roosevelt started it, when hard times were here. Yeah, that's how it got started. He put them in all the parks. Most of the parks had them in. There's a lot of parks all over, But it helped a lot of people that really were down and out. It got them going a little bit because there wasn't any money. Nobody had any money.
In 1933, the United States was in the midst of the Great Depression, with nearly 1 in 4 Americans out of a job. Many felt it was time for a new deal from a new president. Franklin Delano Roosevelt became that new president, and in his first month in office, he created the Civilian Conservation Corps. The CCC was just one of a number of New Deal programs that made the federal government the employer of last resort.
Times were rough. My dad had died, and my mother, I and my brother was still at home, and you couldn't find a job or anything, and we had lost the farm. My dad had spent his lifetime saving up a little to buy a farm, and he owed quite a bit on it, and you needed eating money. My mother needed eating money.
I'm going down to DCCC.
Only single men between the ages of 18 and 25, whose families were on relief, were eligible to join the Civilian Conservation Corps. A CCC boy received room and board, clothing, training, and a monthly paycheck of $30, 25 of which was sent home to his family. In Iowa, 12,800 able-bodied young men enrolled in the Civilian Conservation Corps in its first year.
To DCCC.
It was run very much like in the Army. We'd sleep in Army cots. We made the bed like the Army. We had cleaned things like the Army. We polished our shoes like they did in the Army. Very much so. It was good training, I'll tell you that what. I grew up in a hurry.
Why did I join the CCC? Why did I join the CCC? Why did I join the CCC? This old hard labor's killing me.
Despite its name, the Civilian Conservation Corps was in many ways a military organization. U.S. Army officers or reserve officers called to active duty commanded the camps. There were inspections, roll calls, and curfews, and most of the equipment was military in origin. like the uniforms, which were World War I Army surplus.
In a lot of ways, the CCs were stricter than the Army was in ways, keeping the barracks clean and uniforms and stuff like that.
A typical day in the CCC camp started with reveille at 6 a.m., followed by roll call, calisthenics, breakfast, and cleanup. 8 a.m. was when the work began, and while the camps were under military control, the work sites were commanded by a project superintendent who was assisted by area residents known as local experienced men.
They would take us down to a big area there where we all lined up, and the government would turn us over to the state to go to work for the state. And it was all state work from then on until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, then they turned you back over to the government again.
Life for a CCC boy was not all work and no play. There were a number of team sports at the camps, including baseball, boxing, and basketball. Teams from different CCC camps often competed against each other or against teams in nearby towns. Each camp had a rec hall and library. There were camp newspapers, photography clubs, even classrooms where a CCCer could learn to read and write or learn a trade. And on a Saturday or Sunday, there were trips home to be with family, or trips to the nearest town where a movie cost only 10 cents.
We worked 5 days a week. If it rained during the week, one time during the week, and we couldn't go out and work in the mud, you know, and stuff like that, then we had to work Saturdays, which usually meant then that we only had Sunday off. But if we got 2 days in a row, most of us would find our way home over the weekend.
The CCC was designed to help not only the nation's human resources, but its natural resources as well. Nationwide, over 2.5 million young men served in the Corps. In Iowa, over 46,000 CCC men worked on conservation and construction projects in 43 state parks. And for generations, Iowans have enjoyed the fruits of their labor. The Department of Natural Resources is working to preserve not only the CCC trails, dams, and structures in Iowa's state parks, but also the oral histories of the men who built them. In 2002, the DNR started a project in which 140 veterans of the CCC were interviewed about their experiences.
Like I say, the whole thing was just enjoyable. I enjoyed every minute of it there.
Those recordings will become a part of the CCC Museum located in Backbone State Park in northeast Iowa. And in the fall of 2002, at its annual volunteer program, the DNR paid tribute to the enduring legacy of Iowa's CCC boys.
I look at it now, and it was probably the best thing that ever happened to us. Us young people then that didn't have a job, and I think it was a good deal. I think Franklin Roosevelt knew what he was doing.
Iowa must have been fascinating in the 1840s and 50s when groups from all over passed through here on their trek westward. Many of those brave souls looked upon our home state as no more than a difficult place to get through. Perhaps that's why it seems so strange that one group settled here hoping to find Utopia.
J'envisage un paradis terrestre où tout le monde collabore à engendrer une fraîche existence. Une nouvelle société où la liberté, l'égalité et la fraternité s'acharnent ensemble à définir son peuple. I know this utopia exists. I'll call my dreamland Icaria, derived from Icarus of Greek mythology, who fashioned a pair of wax wings to his shoulders and sought to fly. Onward, mes amis, let us fly to our utopia as Icarus.
Oppression of the middle class in France in the 1840s drove Étienne Cabet to seek his vision of utopia in America. Some 400 French people answered his cry.
Allons à Icaria.
Their American journey began in New Orleans and continued into Texas. Unaccustomed to what they considered jungle-like conditions, some suffered high fevers and died. After wintering back in New Orleans, the Icarians moved north to an abandoned Mormon settlement in Nauvoo, Illinois. Discontent ensued, and Cabé was rejected by his followers and died shortly thereafter. Like the Amish, Shakers, and Mormons before them, the Icarians went westward looking for their utopia in the vast, unsettled prairies of Iowa.
They felt like owning property and the exchange of money were probably the two greatest evils that kept people from being happy and living together harmoniously. We established a local group called the Adams County Icarian Society. I'm just a facilitator. I try to keep the story of Icaria alive.
In southwest Iowa near Corning, the village called Icaria began with 30 families working together to build a model society. For the next 38 years, they adhered to the principles of equality, fraternity, and liberty. They were known as communists simply because they lived communally.
This was the very beginning of what you would call communism. They were what they called democratic socialist communists. There was no revolution or violence connected with this group of communists.
The Icarians had all the necessary tradespeople to sustain their community, including blacksmiths, farmers, shoemakers, and seamstresses. The colony had a laundry, pharmacy, school, and even its own newspaper. All monies and possessions were placed into a common fund. Families lived in separate houses, but meals were eaten in the dining hall, which still stands today and serves as a farmhouse. Marie Marchand Ross lived as a child of Icaria.
All the families ate together in the big dining hall. We usually ate onion soup, rhubarb pie, and Papa's bread, spread with sorghum molasses. Nothing could have tasted better or been more satisfying.
Icarians were dedicated to culture and education and adhered to a high moral standard. They made contributions to the community through art, music, language, and poetry. It was, in fact, an Icarian who designed our state capitol building.
They were happy people. They had dances, they had musicals, they put on operatic performances. They believed in education. There was not an illiterate person in the group.
Their government was elected democratically and established a constitution. Although they practiced no formal religion, they did believe strongly in Christian values.
On Sundays, we were appointed to prepare a program for meeting that consisted of recitations, songs, and readings of Cabé's writings from his book, True Christianity. I enjoyed this. It was an inspiration to our cause.
It's always been a goal to write a book about the Icarians. I don't believe there's anything like this in this part of the country. Here we have just 3 miles from Corning, a village buried beneath the ground that's unexplored.
Scholarly interest in the Icarians inspired an archaeological dig in 1978, conducted by the universities of Indiana and Nebraska. Other artifacts handed down to descendants remain at the Icarian Research Center in Corning.
When the weather was bad, they wore these wooden shoes because they didn't want to ruin their leather shoes.
The Icarian Society in Corning plans to recreate the original settlement and honor its earliest citizens with a marker in the old cemetery. Despite hard work and dedication, the Icarians didn't find their utopia. With exposure to the encroaching outside world, some Icarians yearned to taste the fruits of their individual labor.
Why do I put my money in the communal treasury when the young fellow on the farm next to me is making money and keeping it for himself?
There were some boys one day that ate some strawberries and out of the patch, and they were reprimanded because they were not supposed to eat strawberries unless everybody had a chance to eat strawberries.
Icaria was just one of the hundreds of pioneer settlements that failed to create utopia, but records show that they did achieve some degree of success.
There was one statement that was made by an Icarian in the later days, and it said, "We did not fail, but we just didn't accomplish our goal completely."
The vision that I see before me is based on no other objective than to lead men to love each other like brothers. by giving them as a rule of conduct this principle that summarizes all: love your neighbor as yourself.
We've told many moving stories over the years on living in Iowa, but this may be the most moving of them all, especially if you measure how moving something is by how much it weighs. The historic Hale Bridge was uprooted from its original location in March of 2006 to nestle in its new home in Wapsipinicon State Park in Anamosa. Watching 3 sections of steel bridge totaling more than 50,000 pounds flying through the air is awe-inspiring. But the tale of how the citizens of Jones County pulled together to make it happen, now that's a story that is truly moving.
On March 8th of 2006, Jones County residents searched a foggy sky for nearly 20,000 pounds of flying iron, a 100-foot section of a bowstring bridge. Just one of 3 spans airlifted that morning by the Iowa Army National Guard. It was a massive move that only covered 15 miles, but took 4 years to plan.
I got a call from the State Historical Society, and they told me they had a 296-foot bridge that needed saving, and I laughed at them. And when I got through laughing, they said, "No, Rose, I'm serious." And that's how it started.
Rose Rohr is chair for the Jones County Historic Preservation Commission, and with that phone call became project manager for the Hale Bridge project. In a county that is known more for the regionalist art of Grant Wood than for moving large iron structures, the task of saving the Hale Bridge was a bridge yet to be crossed.
It's one of those things, nobody thinks we can do it, so by gosh, we're going to do it. I think the biggest thing is because there haven't been a lot of bridges this size that have been moved and preserved, like what we're doing. It's not like you have this instruction book that tells you what to do.
Manufactured by the King Iron Bridge and Manufacturing Company of Cleveland, Ohio, it took Jones County 2 years to complete the original construction of the Hale Bridge. Finished in 1879, it was the longest standing bowstring arch bridge in the state of Iowa. Back then, bridges made of iron, like the Hale Bridge, were cost-effective and durable replacements to wooden bridges, which were often destroyed by ice flowing downriver each spring. According to Mike Finn, author of Bowstring Arch Bridges of Iowa, the structures were vital in not only linking, but in building communities. And of the thousands of iron bridges that once spanned Iowa's rivers, only 20 still exist.
And the Hale Bridge, this bowstring bridge, is the last remnant of a time span that was over 100 years ago. And if we don't save these, if you can't see them and touch them, how are you ever going to know what was going on back then?
The Hale Bridge proved to be very durable, tying together the banks of the Wapsipinicon for nearly 125 years. But as Jones County Supervisor Joe Cruz remembers, the safety of the bridge had been questionable for quite some time.
Probably in about the middle 50s, school buses had to come down through here. The bridge was not safe enough then. They figured to take us across, so we had to get out and walk across, and then they brought the bus across. And that was, I would say, about the middle 50s.
In 1997, the Jones County Board of Supervisors determined it was time for a new bridge. But it wasn't until 2002 that Rose Rohr was asked to be involved with preserving the old iron bridge. Her first job would be to convince people that it was a structure worth saving.
It's not just about preserving a bridge. It's preserving the engineering, the culture, I'll say a community of people.
In the winter of 2003, the Hale Bridge was removed from where it had stood for over a century to make room for the new concrete bridge. As a volunteer, Rose was working 40 to 60 hours a week, attending meetings, writing grants, and building her own bridges as she pulled partners into the project. There were those who said she would never be able to do it, but as she worked to save a bridge, she galvanized a community.
It keeps building. It's kind of like the snowball effect. People get excited. Once they actually believe that this can happen, I'm very proud of all the people I'm working with.
The restoration of the bridge involved some welding, sandblasting, and a new coat of paint. In total, nearly $450,000 in federal, state, and regional grants was given to preserve the bridge. Locally, Stone City Quarry donated the stone that would support the bridge once it was moved to its new location. Bard Concrete donated coloring for the cement, and Darrell Bradley worked to get his company, Alliant Energy, to donate the cost for dropping electrical lines that would make the move possible.
I told her we could do it, and that would be a substantial charge. But when I found out and investigated that it was going to be a community effort and all the community was pitching in, I talked to my superiors, and Alliant Energy was more than happy to jump in and help out with the project.
The new site for the bridge was in Wapsipinicon State Park, 15 miles upriver from its original location. It was determined that moving the bridge by truck would be too difficult and costly, given the route that would have to be taken. The solution was to have the bridge airlifted to its new location by the Iowa Army National Guard. According to Lieutenant Colonel Greg Hapgood, being involved in the community is part of the Guard's mission.
Well, the National Guard really has three primary missions. The first mission is probably the most widely known, which is to help defend our country, to ensure the federal defense of our country. Our second mission is to work in our states to protect citizens of the state of Iowa and also preserve property. But our third mission is to work within our communities to make them better places to live and great places to raise families and places that we can be proud of. And so this mission fits in with our community mission, helping to make Jones County a better place.
The Hale Bridge was actually 3 spans that were pieced together to make one bridge, 264 feet long. The longest span was 100 feet long and weighed 19,600 pounds.
Well, certainly the thing that leaps out about this project from our standpoint is just the sheer size of the masses that we're talking about. The longest span, which was a little over 100 feet, weighed 19,600 pounds. So that put us only about 400 pounds away from what our limit is for a Chinook helicopter.
The bridge was moved by Company B, 2nd Battalion, 211th Aviation out of Mount Joy. 2 CH-47 Chinook helicopters were used to transport the spans one at a time. 2 of the spans were lowered onto the stone piers by helicopter. The third span was placed on a sandbar before being moved into place by 2 cranes.
When you look at the overall mission, our participation was really just a fraction of the time that it took to do everything. It took 4 years for this project to come to fruition. And though we only had a minute hand in the actual project itself, it was amazing the support that people came out to see this bridge move, to rally around the community, and then the people of Jones County who banded together to make this happen. The number of agencies and groups that were involved all worked together in a marvelous way. And I think really if you look at those people involved 4 years ago, a number of people told them, you'll never do this, you'll never raise the money, that bridge will never go anywhere, and those people didn't give up. So it's a great testament to the spirit of Iowans and their inability to let something go from the past when it's right to preserve it.
This is phenomenal for a community. What does this say about Jones County? I just think you need to give everybody here a hand, because it's everybody's doing.
The Hale Bridge in its new location will be more than a memorial to the past. In its new role, it will tie a network of trails together that run through the park. A bridge from the past with a path to the future.
When you have good people around you, anything's possible.
The Best of Living in Iowa is funded in part by the Gilchrist Foundation. Founded by Jocelyn Gilchrist, furthering the philanthropic interests of the Gilchrist family in wildlife and conservation, the arts and public broadcasting, and disaster relief.
Funding for this program was provided by Friends, the Iowa Public Television Foundation. Generations of families and friends who feel passionate about the programs they watch on Iowa Public Television.